60% of the greatest percentage crashes in Wall Street history take place in this single Hebrew month. No other month comes close. If we enlarge our search by just 3 days, how many of the 10 greatest percentage crashes take place in the month of Tishri, or within 3 days of Tishri? 60%. How big is the span of time in which all these stock market crashes cluster? Just 18 days. Thus, 60% of the greatest single-day percentage crashes in Wall Street history cluster around a tiny sliver of the biblical year. They all take place within the same 18 biblical days. If there was nothing more than the natural at work, the greatest crashes should be distributed randomly, more or less evenly, throughout every month and every season of the year. But for 60% of these crashes to cluster around one time period of the year and one small time period points to something more than natural going on. A span of 18 days represents less than 5% of the year. The chances of any one of these crashes to take place during this short space of time would be 5%. But instead of 5%, we have the majority of them doing that, or 60% of the greatest stock market crashes, all occurring in a span of time representing 5% of the year. And this 5% of the year happens to fall in the critical month of Tishri. Only a minority of the great crashes take place outside this very tiny fraction of days. The mystery behind the greatest post-war percentage crashes. What if we update our search field to the percentage crashes in the post-World War II era? From the top 8 greatest post-war percentage crashes, do any of them take place in the biblical month of financial repercussions, in Tishri, or its eve? The majority, 62.5%. Are any of these crashes connected to the Shemitah or its climactic wake? Yes, 87.5%. How many of these crashes are either connected to the Shemitah, its wake, or the biblical month of Tishri? 100%. The mystery behind the 20 greatest percentage crashes. What if we now expand the search beyond the top 10 to the top 20 greatest single-day percentage crashes? Will the connection to the mystery of the Shemitah still hold? Of the 20 greatest percentage crashes in Wall Street history, how many are linked to the month of Tishri? 45% of them are linked to the month of Tishri. How many of them are linked to the year of the Shemitah? 50% of them. How many are linked to the month of Tishri, its eve, the Shemitah, or its wake? 75% of them. The connection to the mystery holds, and consistently so. The ancient mystery and the 20 greatest point crashes. What if we now do the same thing with the greatest point crashes in stock market history, expanding the search beyond the top 10 to the top 20? Will the connection to the mystery of the Shemitah still hold? Of the top 20 point crashes in stock market history, how many are linked to the Elul Tishri cycle? Over half of them, 55%. How many of the crashes are specifically linked to the climactic end of the Shemitah, the time of financial remission? 70% of them. How many crashes are connected to the year of the Shemitah? 75% of them. How many are linked to the month of Elul, its eve, the year of the Shemitah, or its wake? 85% of them. The phenomenon again manifests strangely, consistently, and amazingly so. The mystery of proximity. What happens if we take the 5 greatest point crashes in stock market history and see how close each falls to the Shemitah's greatest point of impact concerning the financial realm, the point where Elul and Tishri converge at the end of the Shemitah year, since the point of impact can only affect that which comes after it and not before? We will mark the crash by where it falls within the 7-year period, how near or far it occurs from the Shemitah's greatest point of impact. If nothing more than natural is at work, we should expect the crashes to average out to a proximity of about 50%, or to fall on average about 3.5 years away from the Shemitah's end, the halfway mark in the 7-year cycle. But what we find is dramatically different and amazing. The 5th greatest stock market point crash. Proximity to biblical point of impact, 99.609%. The fourth greatest stock market point crash. Proximity to biblical point of impact, 97.54%. The third greatest stock market point crash. Proximity to biblical point of impact, 100%. The second greatest stock market point crash. Proximity to biblical point of impact, 99.375%. The first greatest stock market point crash. Proximity to biblical point of impact, 100%. Average proximity and convergence of the 5 greatest stock market point crashes to the Shemitah's greatest point of impact, 99.305%. The mystery behind the top 5 greatest post-war percentage crashes. Of the top 5 greatest percentage crashes of the post-war era, how many of them took place either in the wake of the Shemitah's climax or at the moment of climax itself? 100%. The mystery behind the top 5 greatest point crashes in history. Of the 5 greatest point crashes in American history, how many of them took place either in the wake of the Shemitah's climax or at the moment of climax itself? 100%. The 3 greatest percentage crashes in 3 Hebrew days. The top 3 greatest percentage crashes in Wall Street history bear either the name Black Monday or Black Tuesday. Do they bear any connection to the mystery of the Shemitah, which determines Tishri as the key month of financial repercussions? Here are the 3 greatest percentage crashes in history, revealing their dates on the biblical calendar. The second greatest percentage crash, Black Monday, 1929, Tishri 24. The third greatest percentage crash, Black Tuesday, 1929, Tishri 25. The first greatest percentage crash, Black Monday, 1987, Tishri 26. Thus, of the 3 greatest percentage crashes in Wall Street history, and of all the days in the calendar on which they could take place, they all happen within a span of 3 days on the biblical calendar. The greatest of all crashes. What if we look just at the 2 greatest crashes of all time, the greatest point crash in history and the greatest percentage crash in history? What would it reveal? Each crash is connected to the month of Tishri. One takes place in the midst of Tishri, and the other on the day that begins it. Each takes place at the end of the 7-year biblical cycle, the Shemitah's climactic conclusion or wake, the time ordained in the ancient mystery for massive transformations and remission in the financial realm, and for the manifesting of its repercussions. The evidence is clear. We have lifted up this measuring rod. If there was nothing more than the natural at work in the greatest collapses in history, then the greatest financial collapses in history should be more or less evenly distributed throughout the year. We have searched the matter on several grounds and applied several probes, tests, and parameters. The conclusion: something very much more than natural is indeed going on, and the signs of the phenomenon all point to the same ancient biblical mystery. If the collapse of the world's stock markets were an act of crime, the Shemitah would have long ago been indicted for the evidence left at the crime scene. In its numbers, its connections, its convergences, its percentages, its magnitude, and its consistency, the amount of fingerprints covering the financial cataclysms of modern times is overwhelming. We now take the mystery to another level. The mystery of the Shemitah is not only a phenomenon operating behind the world's economic and financial realms, it is also a phenomenon linked to judgment. Is it possible that the dynamics of the Shemitah are moving increasingly toward judgment? The answer will lie with the transpiring of a calamitous event and the days in which the mystery of the Shemitah coalesces with the mystery of the harbingers.